Welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. I am Litabo Ramango, aka Mrs. R, and I am here to bring you knowledge. Nothing but knowledge, okay? So, today we're going to be talking about whether climate, weather, and vegetation can be taught in isolation, right? Do you think it can be taught in isolation? Well, keep that in mind. I'm going to give you guys 5 seconds to go grab a piece of paper and a pen, and we'll be right back. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We are going to talk about how weather, climate, and vegetation cannot be taught in isolation, right? How do these concepts work together? That is what we are going to be learning today. We are also going to look at the examples from the regional case studies as well as the South African case studies. But before we get to that, let's start from the top. I want you guys to think back to your geography lessons. Yes, all the way back. Remember, in order to understand a word, we first have to define it. Yes, define it. So, I want you guys to quickly define what is weather, climate, and vegetation. 5 seconds. Okay, we are going to start with weather. What is weather? Weather is the daily condition of the atmosphere at a specific place and time. Look at the following pictures. One is having a sunny day and the other is having a windy or a rainy day, right? These are the conditions that we get on a day-to-day basis. These conditions continuously change every day. The weather yesterday is different from the weather today. Don't forget. Now, we have what we call climate. What is climate? Climate refers to the average weather pattern of a place over a long period of time. Climate is the weather over a long period of time. Now, do not confuse weather and climate. Weather is over a short period of time and it changes on a day-to-day basis, whereas climate is over a long period of time, right? For example, we have the Sahara Desert. As you can see in the picture, the Sahara Desert has a hot and dry climate. Can you spot any trees in the pictures below? No, especially in the picture for the Sahara Desert. So, this is because the Sahara Desert receives little rainfall, whereas if you compare to the Antarctica, it has a cold and a wet climate. This is what we mean when we say the climate tells us what kind of weather we can expect. Climate tells us what kind of weather we can expect. In the Sahara Desert, we can expect hot, dry weathers, hot, dry climate, whereas in the Antarctica, we can expect cold and wet climates. Then we have what we call vegetation. Vegetation refers to plants that grow naturally in a specific area. The type of vegetation depends on the climate and weather of that region. We have the Sahara Desert. The climate and the weather of the Sahara Desert has a great influence on what type of plants are in the area. The vegetation that grows in the desert is dependent on the climate and weather conditions. In an area that is hot and dry, we are most likely to get shrubs, aloe vera, and drought-tolerant trees. Now, I want you guys to remember, not all trees or plants can grow in dry and hot conditions. That is why certain areas have certain plants and trees, whereas others do not and cannot accommodate because of the environment. Now, I want you guys to think quickly. Do you think climate, weather, and vegetation can be taught in isolation? Well, I think no. Why do I say so? Let me tell you. I believe that all these concepts influence one another. How so? Weather and climate influence vegetation, vegetation and weather influence climate, and climate influences weather and vegetation. Don't believe me now? It's okay. We're going to look at the case studies that support this statement. On the screen, we have 3 case studies from Africa, specifically named Kenya, Uganda, and Angola. These case studies support the statement that weather, climate, and vegetation cannot be taught in isolation. All these 3 areas have distinct weather, climate, and vegetation patterns that slowly connect. So what I'm trying to say is all these areas are connected. However, they have separate or different weathers, different climates, and different vegetations. These case studies believe that teaching these concepts separately creates an artificial divide that hinders learners' ability to understand. So, teaching learners these concepts separately, teaching learners weather separately and climate separately hinders their ability to understand. That is why we say weather and climate as well as vegetation cannot be taught separately. They all are interlinked. They are all connected. To understand one, you have to know the other. These case studies believe that different climate regions, whether hot or warm, support distinct plant communities. In simple terms, they believe that areas that are hot or cold have their own plants and or trees. Example, the Sahara Desert has a specific tree that grows in hot and dry areas. That is why different plants are from different places. A hot area has deserts, whereas a cold area or wet area has rainfall. Now, I want us to go into the case studies for the South African biomes. In South Africa, we are going to look at 2 specific case studies, namely the fynbos biome and the savanna biome. The fynbos biome in Western Cape has a climate with wet winters and dry, hot summers, whereas the savanna biome has a climate with wet seasons and dry winters. Other examples include Free State. Free State has hot summers and cold winters with low rainfall. And we have Durban, which has warm conditions, especially in summer. In conclusion, what are we talking about? Climate, weather, and vegetation are deeply interconnected and they cannot be studied separately. The examples of fynbos, savanna, Durban, Free State, and the regions such as Kenya, Uganda, and Angola show how each area's climate and weather patterns shape the type of plants that grow there. So, what have we learned? We have learned that weather changes every day. We also learned that climate is the long-term patterns of weather. Lastly, we learned that vegetation refers to plants and trees in an area. Now, to close it off, we now know that climate, vegetation, and weather cannot be taught in isolation. However, to truly understand nature, we must see how climate, weather, and vegetation work together as a whole system. Now, don't forget to practice. Practice makes perfect, so keep on learning. Enjoy.